For the last several weeks, we talked about the history of our dietary changes, categories of diets, popular modern diets, dietary habits of centenarians, and many other topics. Today, in our final video of the Diets and Nutrition series, we'll try to better understand what a diet really is and how to pick the right one. And I can tell you right away, it's not easy. Here's an interesting fact about setting dietary guidelines. The American government managed to mount the flag on the moon by the effort of Apollo 11 mission and its crew, Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins, 8 years before publishing the first ever the dietary goals for the United States in 1977. So, it turned out that setting dietary guidelines is quite a complex effort. This first paper, published by the years of discussions, debate, research and reviews by a committee led by Senator George McGovern, laid the groundwork for this ever-expanding field of science. The recommendation of this paper underwent some modification for the last 4 decades, but the major recommendations of reducing sugars, bad fats and salt have stood the test of time. So let's talk about an ideal diet, whatever it means. Coming up. Hi, Andrew here. Welcome to the Practical Health channel. This past several weeks we talked so much about various diets, their pros and cons, but we didn't cover the core essential of a general diet. So we'll try to cover it in this video. But first, let's take a look back and see where it all started. The history of diets probably starts when the first diseases were observed, and when humans turned to foods to fix them. The ancient Greeks believed that if you had a healthy body, it meant that you also had a healthy mind, which is obviously not true. Don't believe everything the ancient Greeks told you. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, a Greek physician who lived around 400 BC, believed that fat people suffered from unhealthy sleep, aches, pains, flatulence and constipation, and recommended that they follow a strict diet, increase their exercise and even vomit. Pythagoras was a huge proponent of a vegetarian diet, abstaining from eating meat, fish and beans, to foster a healthy body and enhance the search of arete, excellence and reaching one's full potential. The word diet comes from the Greek root word diaeta, which means to live one's life, and from the Latin root word dieta, meaning a manner of living. This word was added to the English vocabulary around the 13th century, but it took quite some time to turn this word into the scientific field. It was not a priority or what? In nutrition, diet refers to the sum of food consumed by a person or other organism. The word diet often implies the intake of a specific nutrition for health or weight management reasons. These days, most people start a diet as an external solution for quick weight loss, and often feel punished and deprived during the process. But there is a but. Diet is not all about weight. It's one of the essential pillars of health, vital to fight against cardiovascular disease, stroke, hypertension, diabetes and obesity, to maintain the integrity of our immune system, bone health, kidney function, and even to treat brain conditions such as epilepsy. So this explains why diet can be more complex than rocket science. If you can point out a cell in your body that is not influenced by diet, I will personally give you my own handcrafted Practical Health Nobel statue. Actually, we don't have one, but we create one if needed. So, the diet is critical. But here some people may say, Andre, you showed us so many diets and so many options that I'm not sure which one will suit me. What should my diet look like in order to maintain my health or ideally improve it? The answer I can give you is all in the nutrients. And there are 3 key elements that we have to take into consideration when talking about nutrients in our diet. First of all, composition. There are essential groups of nutrients, macronutrients and macronutrients, that we need to consume so our bodies function properly every second of the day, every day of the year, every year of the decade. You got the idea, right? Our cells operate, heal, die, replace each other and need both structural molecules and fuels in order to function at their maximum capacity. Did you know that our body, on average, replaces every cell every 7 years? Yeah, there is no trace of you or me from 8 years ago in the present. Though it does make me just 7 years old. It's like the paradox called the ship of Theseus. The essential macronutrients in our diet are the main holy trinity of carbs, fats and proteins, followed by the so needed micronutrients, fiber, vitamins and minerals. Secondly, we have to make sure that the nutrients we eat generate necessary energy for our daily operations. On average, around 1800 calories for women and 2200 calories for men. Also, these numbers heavily depend on the physical and mental activity of any given day. Remember, each gram of carbs or proteins generates 4 calories, while each gram of fat generates 9 calories. If you plan on losing weight, picking a diet which is low on calories is a good start. Obviously, we could gobble a glass of sugar containing 2000 calories and call it a day. However, here comes the third aspect: diversity and density. By the way, gobbling a glass of sugar is not enjoyable. You probably know that. Diversity refers to consuming as many as possible various food groups and subgroups. Density refers to the property of food to provide vitamins, minerals, essential nutrients, while also having little to no solid fats, sugars, refined starch and sodium. Basically, as natural as it can be and as little processed, refined and artificially enhanced as possible. Diversity is what makes our dieting bearable. That steamed broccoli may sound like a genius idea for a couple of days, but I am sure that eventually you'll reach a point where you'll begin to hate it, like badly. The last element to look at when we're choosing a diet is finding the right macronutrient percentages for you. The Dietary Guidelines, the caloric percentages as published by Harvard University in 2011, recommend the following macronutrient intake: around 45% carbohydrates, 25% proteins, and 30% fats. When thinking of a diet, this is the percentage we have to take into consideration when changing types of foods in order to achieve our health goal. Carbs should be as complex as possible, with less than 25% of refined carbohydrates, such as white bread or sugars. Fats can be broken down into saturated and unsaturated. The latter further broken down into trans and cis unsaturated, depending on the chemical arrangement of the molecules. Here comes one of the biggest misconceptions of 20th century. Fats are bad. Sure, most of them are, but we tend to push the good ones aside too. The bad fats are the saturated fats, such as in butter, margarine, fatty pork, fatty beef, basically solid fats, and the trans unsaturated fats found in cakes, cookies, fried foods, frozen or refrigerated dough. The good cardiovascular protective fats are the cis fats found in corn oil, flax oil, grilled fish, soybean oil, walnuts, pine nuts, and the list goes on. Out of the 30% of daily fats, no more than 7% should be saturated, and no more than 1% should be trans-saturated, which leaves you with 22% of good quality cis-saturated fats. Frank Hu, an essential nutrition scientist from Harvard University, even proved in 2011 that a diet of refined carbohydrates and sugars damages your health more than a diet based solely on bad saturated fats. Science is slowly shifting toward this fact. However, many people and even scientists cling to the misconception of the century that fats are the worst. Last but not least, I want to talk about some recommendations outlined in the 2015-2020 Dietary Guidelines for Americans. Less than 10% of daily calories must come from sugars or refined carbohydrates. Less than 10% of daily calories must come from saturated fats. And less than 2300 milligrams of sodium should be consumed daily, the equivalent of about 6 grams of salt. So that's it for now. So what we have discussed today. The history of dietary guidelines begins in 1977. Macronutrients and micronutrients are essential for a healthy diet. The daily calorie intake is around 1800 calories for women and 2200 calories for men. Diversity and density of the foods we consume are critical for a healthy diet. Lastly, we talked about a couple more guidelines we should follow every day. So these were great 6 weeks of talking about diets. I hope you had as much fun as I had, and I hope you learned something new and interesting from this series. We talked about the history of dieting and the first popular diet of William Benting and 7 diet categories. We talked about the dietary changes for the last 12,000 years and learned that 71% of calories of the typical Western diet today come from the foods that were not even available in the Paleolithic age. We discussed multiple diets including paleo, vegetarian, vegan, keto, intermittent fasting, gluten-free, Atkins and others. We tried to figure out whether our digestive system is closer to that of herbivores or carnivores. There is still no consensus there. We learned that the dietary habits of centenarians are full of raw eggs and fats, and that diet is only one factor that impacts the life expectancy. And today, in our final video of this series, we discuss the basics of a healthy diet. So I hope this series helped you to think about your diet and whether you can improve it. If you enjoyed this video, click that like button and subscribe to our Practical Health channel. Thank you for your time, stay strong, stay healthy, and talk to you next time. Bye!